like to bring this meeting to order, and our first order of business is our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome this evening to everyone. Nice big crowd. And we have first order, I will take the approval of the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. So before we get on to public comment, I have just a couple of answers. A few constituents had questions and comments about curriculum last meeting, and I just want to give a little bit of an overview so that we know. The board has approved curriculum and it is listed on our website. And the best path for parents to know what curriculum their students are learning is to ask the student and the teacher first. Reviewing the syllabus on Schoology is also available to all parents at secondary level. And then, of course, patrons can review approved textbooks by making an appointment and coming in to the district office during business hours. We've not had a practice of loaning out school district materials just as a way to protect the investment in the materials. This is not always most convenient for parents who work and aren't available during school hours, but we're just not staffed for evening and out of like evening and weekends, so we don't have the district office open on evenings and weekends. But whenever new curriculum is being considered for adoption, parents and patrons are invited into a specific committee for review and to give input. So that has been the pattern in the past and will be going forward. Science is our next curricula area that we will be reviewing, but as we know from our conversation last night with legislators, that's going to be on hold a little bit as we wait for the legislator to review that curriculum and see if it changes any state standards in relation to that. So as for concerns with specific curriculum, that was another area of interest in the last meeting. We teach to the Idaho state standards, and we use a curriculum that's state approved and aligned to those standards. We try to stay on a 6-year adoption cycle for the main curriculum areas. Parents always have the right to opt their student out of a specific lesson. And in place, there would be an alternate lesson in place of whatever they opted out of. Our current elementary ELA and social studies curriculum is on the Idaho state adopted list. So that's just a little bit of an overview from the board standpoint of how we approach curriculum adoption and parental input and transparency to see what's being taught. So with that, I will go right into our first, and I have Jen McKnight.
I don't waste any time. I have about 4 minutes here.
Well, and that is that we have 3 minutes for each comment.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
There was an emphasis at the last meeting that the board should follow code. I understand legislation pretty well. For example, you brought up a bill last time, bill number, and I looked it up, checked the co-sponsors, Dorothy Moon. I looked her up on the Idaho Freedom Index. She has a great rating, so I know the bill is probably good. Aside from being generally able to understand the language, I did bill watching for a session. People treat code like law. I would describe code as more bureaucratic and instruction on how an agency should operate. And I think this would imply that these codes are written for the agency, including Tom, but the board isn't the agency. The board is direct, current, local representation of the people. Why is there a board? Why is there a board if the people's voice can be heard through code and applied through the agency? We don't hire a team of code checkers. Legislation is so messed up, you couldn't follow every code if you wanted to. there are too many codes. There really are. And many of them conflict with each other, besides being a violation of more dominant laws. Legislation is broken. So why is there a board? Why is there a board that is over the superintendent? That's crazy, right? He definitely knows more about the school. The board is a check. I could use the term check and balance, but it's the check part. The school power structure is like a cake with many layers. The people are layered in many times. Not the parents, not the students. They're in the cake. There are lawyers in your cake. There are cops in your cake. There are teachers in your cake. But the people are layered into the school power structure many times. And then the cake is topped with a big old handful of the people. That's the board. You don't want lawyers on top of your cake. The teachers' unions, the school board association, these should not be on top of the cake. Board members, when you make decisions, you are bound to follow the will of the people in the most direct way possible.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Sandy Nicholson? Did I read it right?
Yep.
Sandy.
Thank you.
Yep.
I wanted to thank you guys for an excellent job. In 2 years, my partner and I will have put 8 kids through the high school with a combined current tenure of 23 years as parents in the district. Every single year, every single one of our children's teachers sends out a comprehensive information on what they'll be learning, how to reach out to them, and ways in which I can be involved and actually encouraged to be involved in what they're learning. So thank you, especially to Mr. Albertson. That is a testament to you. I feel if I need to view the curriculum, I know exactly how to do that. I do want to formally say in this meeting that I oppose the parental rights policy. I believe school board policy should be to protect the school board from individuals, not individuals from the school board. I also believe that it is a litigious risk to adopt a detailed policy as opposed to a general policy. This policy puts us at risk of even more lawsuits than the general sweeping policy that's already in place. And I just would like to respond to the last commenter that the structure that we have for a school board is legally set up by the state, and the state's pretty clear of what the role of the school board is. And we do get to elect you, that's where our power is, but then your directive comes from the state currently, legally. And then we can comment on your work on that, and that's where you can take into consideration our comments. But your directive actually comes from the state. So I uphold and support you putting that burden back on the people and taking on the burden of the directives of the state as opposed to constantly taking directives from individuals in the minority of your constituents in these meetings. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have Melinda Rothman next.
Thank you for letting me talk. I've watched the last couple board meetings. Melinda Rothman, property owner, taxpayer in Bonner County. And I've been an educator to some degree since I was 18 years old. And I always look for the truth. And I always speak about truth. And I don't say anything that's not true. And I've watched the last couple board meetings online, so I had some personal tragedy I had to get through. Back at it. And I was appalled as an educator. I've been a member of National Education Association for 21 years. And I get this journal every month. And about a year and a half ago, I spoke about CRT infiltrating our schools and to be very aware of it and that it's not a good agenda. And I was attacked in the local newspaper about my view, saying that I'm making stuff up. No, I have the journal talking about why NEA thinks CRT should be in our schools. Well, this month, the journal talks about fraudulent voting. And as an educator, I seek the truth all the time. There are 3 articles in this month's journal with misinformation about voting rights. It's propaganda. It's telling people lies. And when I saw these 3 articles, I was just blown away. This goes to over several million people in the United States. And the psychosis of fear is being propagated through this journal. When is it going to stop? When are we going to stand up against the lies? When are we going to stand up against the media? You're educators. I'm an educator. Almost everybody in this, no, everybody that's a parent and teacher or administrator is an educator. We have a dual right. We have a responsibility to know the truth. And this journal is filled with lies and misinformation just about our voting process. We can't let what happened in 2020 ever happen again in our nation. But there's 3 articles in here filled with propaganda, filling people's minds with misinformation about voting. It's got to stop somewhere. I've written over and over again to NEA and said, hey, make this stop. And do I get a response? No. Well, it's just one member. Just one member. We don't have to respond. But I'm going to speak out against this type of lies and misinformation. And I would hope that you all would stand up for it too, as educators. Thank you.
And I have Sherry Tilford.
Good evening. I'm Sherry Tilford. My daughter attends the Homeschool Academy here. And I want to talk to you guys today about my concern for the future of the Homeschool Academy. Melinda Rossman, who we just heard from, has been the principal for the last, how long has it been? 6 years. She created the program basically to be what it is. I know there was work with the administration, but she's going to be very hard to replace. Between her multiple educational degrees, her professional and personal experience, her willingness to be different, to question, and to stand up for the truth is going to be very hard to replace in one person. She has been a bulwark against the hysteria of the last 2 years for the students who attend her school. I'm thankful that we're outside of the state curriculum requirements because despite the laws and codes that prohibit CRT, and because words shape our reality and language matters, I think we should call it what it is, and that's anti-white propaganda. It's a soft totalitarianism of a woke narrative under the guise of helping and healing. It's subversively in many, if not most of the books being used by schools, as many parents have attested to here. And many dismiss this threat as mere political correctness, a desire to right the wrongs or make everyone feel more comfortable in this brave new world of pleasure and safety. A distortion of the truth is dangerous, and whoever takes over the Homeschool Academy is going to need to be aware of that. Many parents and families at the Homeschool Academy are there because they see the dangers of indoctrination in the public schools. Whoever takes over needs to recognize the needs of this community. I'm wondering, will there be a committee involved in the choosing, the selecting, and the hiring of whoever is proposing to take over? Will the parents be involved in this decision? My family has been a part of the Homeschool Academy since the first year. I've been a teacher in the program and a chaperone for most of their events, as well as a parent of a child there. And I would like to be involved and make sure that the program stands for what it really is. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have Luke Ahmet.
Got my timer going. Madam Chairwoman and Mr. Albertson, thank you for letting me speak. I'm here to say thank you. I am not here to do much other than to say thank you. My family has been having relatives attend our public schools for 42 years, pretty much nonstop. I am a teacher. I have taught at Sandpoint High School. My kids attend the same school that their grandmother did and their mother did. The quality of educators here is obvious. I can see that in the people that I know that I have served with, I see it in the person I'm looking at right now. Thank you. We teach to standards, and I know that our teachers do. The quality of educators that teach social studies at Sandpoint, I can speak specifically to Brian Smith. He was the valedictorian of the class of '95. We may have an argument about personal politics, but what we agree on is the profession. We agree on the standards. And as a government teacher who teaches in Boundary County School District, I can unequivocally state that in Northern Idaho, we believe in the rule of law, and the rule of law is why you are here. And ultimately, what I really want to say, especially to the board members, thank you for giving your time, regardless of the people that show up, such as myself, to take it, because your service to our community is greatly appreciated. I also want to speak very briefly, because I know negotiation season is coming up. Classified wages are something that, as a state, our legislature has a very tough time coming anywhere close to affording. And from the custodians, to the cooks, to the bus drivers, to the administrative assistants, those are people that all have a profound impact upon my child. So, thank you.
And I have Kristen Dodd.
Hi, Kristen.
First, I want to once again request that the board change the format for public comment. I would like the public to be allowed to respond and discuss agenda items as they are being discussed by the board, similar to what the county commissioners do. The public should have their questions and ideas responded to in real time and on record, in my opinion. The 30-minute allowance at the beginning of the meeting is great for non-agenda items, but for agenda items, this tends to feel like we're talking to a wall or a mirror. It is a one-way communication, and there needs to be a conversation between the public and the board. This would encourage more involvement from the public, and I think that should be the goal. Second, I would like to ask that House Bill 377 be included in the parental rights policy. This bill addresses how the ideas found in critical race theory exacerbate and inflame divisions on the basis of sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, and national origin. The bill also forbids any public school from directing or compelling students to adopt or adhere to any of the tenets defined as critical race theory. I want to make sure that every single LPOSD board member and staff member is familiar and compliant with this now law. I know that the ideology behind CRT is covered into the curriculum, as we've discussed, and I'd like to see an honest and diligent effort made to remove any of that from our curriculum processes and policies. And I don't see why we can't go above and beyond the Idaho standards. I get that, some of that we have to adhere to. I'm not asking that the board do anything outside of the law or statute, but I think we can do better. Last, I see several potential bids on the agenda tonight, and I would like to know if any of these bids are outside of our general fund and budget. More specifically, I want to know if any of these projects will be paid for out of ESSER funds. I'd like to have some discussion about what requirements the school district has associated with the use of these funds. Ultimately, I would like to advocate for not spending any ESSER or COVID-related funds. I would like to advocate for not spending money that is not part of our budget. We need to get off the federal government teat and learn to live within our means. We have got to start reclaiming our sovereignty from the federal government. We need local control over our children's education. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, thank you everyone who spoke. I'm going to pass this down to Kelly. And we have presentation from, the first is from Forest Bird Charter School. And we're welcoming Mary Jensen and Jennifer Grieve. Hello, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Casey, for holding our purses.
Thanks, Casey.
Sorry, it's kind of an old joke. Hi.
Hello.
I know most of you guys, except for Mr. Peters. Congratulations for making it on the board. My name is Mary Jensen. I am Tanya, are you new too? I thought
I am.
Forever. I swear to God. Maybe you were just.
She's like me.
No, we're just.
Yeah, I'm completely embarrassed.
You'll be fine.
I'll be fine. I'll get over it. My name is Mary Jensen. I am the charter administrator at Forestburg Charter School.
I'm Jennifer Grieve. I'm the principal and dean of students and Mary's wingman. So she has a great presentation. I'm going to let her take over. And I know because we have new members, I also want to be present if there are questions around charter specifically. So I'm right here. I gotcha. Let's give it to Casey. Sorry.
I also want to say that Jennifer's title as principal changed to dean of students. We just felt like it encompassed better what she had done, and it sounds fancier. So she still is principal, but dean of students sounds so good, doesn't it? On our board, we have Kate McAllister. She's been there forever and a day, 10 years. Stacy Mueller, Jem Zuberbuehler, and Jacob Iverson, all names that a lot of people would know in the community. Jacob Iverson works for Harlow's Bus Company, so he's really important to understand transportation laws because he works down with the state a lot. So he's a newer member, the newest member actually of our team, and we're really grateful that he decided to take it on. Our board members are appointed, not elected, because for charters, they have to make sure they adhere to our philosophy and mission of the charter. So they want to make sure that the people who are on our board believes in that. Because when we apply to the state and to you guys way back when, we have to adhere to the philosophy and mission.
It also ties to our 501c3 status.
As a nonprofit. Don't move yet. And blue. And so I was wondering if the new board members, we presented to these guys, if you guys have any questions about the charter school. Really, now Tanya's like,
What is your mission?
our mission is that we're a project-based learning school that has mastery education focus. So we don't believe in testing per se. We want students to be able to show us that they can do the skills instead of like a multiple choice test. Even though we do have some testing, it is not our focus. And then they can redo assignments or lessons as many times until they get a 70% or higher. We don't have the grades of D. So to pass any class, they have to have a 70%. Thank you for that question.
When you get through your presentation, if there's questions that have come up, we'll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Might have some more.
I love questions. So for our demographics, right now we have 246 students in the school. We are down about 60 students this year. A lot of them went to homeschool, some of them moved out, some of them went to LPOSD. We expected that during COVID times. Generally, almost every charter school in the state has seen a decrease in enrollment, mainly because a lot of them went to homeschool due to the COVID situation. We anticipate that it'll take about 2 years to regain those numbers, so we're not too concerned. Our funding comes mostly from the state through ADA per student, but the ESSER funds will allow us to maintain our staff, keep paying them as we did before. Our total IEP student, special ed student population is 20%. There is a misnomer that charter schools don't take IEP students. 20% is quite high for a school to have special ed students. Our poverty rate jumped 10% in the past year, from 37% to 47%. I think that talking to other agencies, that's common throughout the area. The homelessness has also increased. It says 4% there, but that's quite low because we have identified quite a few students recently on the homelessness. The homelessness for our students, it looks like they cannot afford the rentals here, so they're living with other people or in their cars. So it's not that they're making less money necessarily on the homelessness, it's just that they're having problems finding a place to live. And I think that's a common thing right now in our area. You can see our numbers by grade level. You can also see our advanced opportunity students and college dual enrolled students. So even though we have a higher, looks like poverty rate and homeless rate, we are proud to be able to use the state funds for students, whoever they are, to start taking college courses. And we generally have about 4 students a year leave our school with associate's degrees, that helps them a good kickstart towards getting what they want in the future for college or university. Okay. Now, you mathematicians don't get it. Because I know the percentages don't quite match with what we're funded. That's what the auditors gave me, it's their fault. I was trying to make it work on Friday, the percentages, but I can't change the audit report. So please don't ask me why it doesn't match it, because I don't know. So our state funding, this is the majority of the money comes from state, just like any other public school. We get funded the same with the state. Federal money is $213,000. Our federal money is mainly Title I, Title II, Title IV. So Title I is supporting kids in need. Title II is professional development. Title IV is homeless students. And then special ed. Okay? And then local support, those are donations. I do have to explain, PTEC, if you guys knew about PTEC, was under our umbrella, but did not contribute to our money as a school. When they shut down, there was a little money left over, they donated it to the school to give scholarships to kids. So that's where the local support mainly is right now. The interest is from student activities, and we get a little interest once in a while. So we're working on a budget of a little over $3 million a year. I love this graph so much. And Geraldine
Yes, she
knows.
does. I know.
She does.
She does.
She loves it every
Okay.
year.
So, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. I'll tell you that. Because Jennifer and I took over the school over here. And we worked to go up because we have to have, as a charter, so much money in our savings to be able to keep going. So we had to do some cutbacks and whatnot to do that. So luckily, we made it and we're good. But if you notice that top line, there's no up. That's good because now we're spending evenly to what we get because we don't need to save anymore. The other reason that straight line is good is that most schools, that line goes down because of COVID. And then they had to use ESSER money. So our auditor was so impressed that we didn't go down. So he gave us a lot of kudos on that for our management of the money. And so that is on all of our staff because they work really hard to manage money. I love it. You like that with That's amazing. So this is where we spend our money. 55% is with salaries. Just so everybody knows, we go with the career ladder only. So our teachers, our staff are paid lower than the traditional public schools because we have no levy to supplement. So we try our best to give them bonuses at the end if there's some extra money, but generally there isn't any, and they're okay with that. We have very little teacher turnaround, which is next to zero, because they love working at the charter school, even despite they're making between $10,000 to $15,000 a year less than traditional public schools. So that's no, we all should get paid for it. Actually, possible. So if you want to help write letters to the legislature, that'd be great. Benefits, that's like health insurance and whatnot. We pay out 20%. Our debt service, that's our building loan, okay? Capital assets, those are computers basically. And purchase services, those are contracted vendors. Snow removal was $5,000 last one. They would give me a hard time. So that was in there. Idaho weather. Okay, perfect. Okay, this gives us a little anxiety to talk about, but I also think it's a celebration. So we are to show you guys our ISAT scores. Now, we're a 6 through 12 school, so we get the kids in 6th grade. We don't get any contact with them before. So for language arts, reading, writing, not arithmetic, that's the next one. So they come to us around 36% proficient or advanced. By the time they're in high school, we get them to 77%. It's because we're lucky. We have small school sizes in the classes. There's more than one. There's reasons around that. Then that's why some people come to us. And then if you wanted to comparatively show with the district, I didn't know if that was appropriate, so I hope that was okay. So
It's all okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's all public knowledge.
It is all public, yes.
Math. So when our 6th graders come in, remember that's the first year we get those kids, they're generally at 24%. Now this is COVID year last year. Ooh, not good, statewide on math scores. They all kind of went down. So we were quite pleased that we see a steady, raise up those 20%, 23% in the high school, which is not too far off locally. So we were actually not displeased with that. Our math departments are working very, very hard to figure out better ways to teach math, but math in Idaho in general is a little difficult. And I think it's the question slide. The questions.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
So you had said that you weren't test-driven, but you have testing. Is that required or optional for your students to participate?
That's a great question. So we have to follow all the same laws as any other public school. So we do have to do testing just like any public school. That's required. Just like we have to follow all the same standards too. We just choose for the assessments during the school year to do it around mastery-based and project-based learning instead of the traditional worksheets and multiple choice. I am so happy to say that the whole state's moving to project-based learning and mastery learning. We see it everywhere now, but when we first opened up, it wasn't. So because we truly believe that is the best way to learn, we're really pleased to see that. It's a trend that's moving forward through everything. Jennifer, do you want to add?
No.
Okay.
I want to wait for the next question.
Is there any other questions you guys have?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, I have one. You said that teacher turnover is very low,
Yes.
but they get paid less.
Yes.
Can you shout out a few whys to that?
They are so immersed and believe into our mission and vision that they like to stay there. They have a lot of freedom in how they create their lessons too, as long as it fits within the standards. They don't have to teach towards a textbook. A lot of them really enjoy that freedom to do that. Another is that we have created a family at BCS, and so we're continually taking care of each other. I know that happens in other school districts as well, but they feel that it happens more with us. We're small, so it's easier. Like brothers and sisters, sometimes we argue within ourselves, but we always have each other's back. So if somebody's sick, somebody else will cover, and they'll take baskets to them to feed them.
What is your teacher staff population? You have 246 students and your staff is?
There's 25 staff members.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think just to tag on to that, one of the things is that as teachers have come through, we have watched them learn to create an environment for students that are safe, that they feel like they can approach the family, the students, and administration with an open dialogue. So regardless of what might be happening, especially, and not just our middle school, but we all know middle school is very turbulent, right? And so working together as a team to help the student then carries through with our high school students as they move towards graduation.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting to us, and as always, we enjoy the relationship we have as your authorizer, and thank you. I love hearing how your school's doing.
You just like seeing Mary get excited about
I know,
this.
Mary gets very animated.
Let's be honest.
Animated. Thank you.
And I want to also, you beat me
Thank
to
you.
it, but you guys have been great, and especially the principals and Tom, who are with me as an administrator. The working relationship is right. Other charters are very jealous of how well we work with our district instead of so competitive. We work together for what's good for the kids. So we talk to the counselors, talk to each other, and we made some nice decisions together. And I hear often that they wish they had a relationship. So thank you, all, especially Tom.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
You know, Casey probably.
Casey Multiverses.
I'm inviting up our principal, Elizabeth D'Alessio, to present for Farm and Stidwell. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Betsy.
Hi.
Do you want me to do this, or do you want to? Okay.
Okay. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Betsy D'Alessio. I'm the principal at Farm and Stidwell. For the past 3 years, I've been fortunate enough to learn the ropes at Farm and Stidwell as the assistant principal, so this is my 4th year. But my Farm and Stidwell experience didn't actually begin 4 years ago. It started more than 30 years ago when I was a Farm and Stidwell student myself. One teacher remains with us from that era, Sharon Gunter, our art specialist. I learned how to weave, how to shape my drawings, how to create baskets in her after school. Did you have her too?
I did not.
Oh.
My brother did.
Yes.
And students today are still impacted by Sharon's incredible talent. So, at Farm and Stidwell, our enrollment fluctuates with numbers typically around 525 students. We're a Title I school with more than 50% of families identifying as low income. We have 31 classrooms, 21 general education classrooms, 3 teachers per grade level, 2 preschool classrooms, 2 life skills classrooms, extended resource, 2 experiential learning, multi-age classrooms, 2 Title I reading and math intervention teachers, and a behavior intervention program. So with an elementary school this size, we actually have 94 staff members on our team. And because of the specialized programs that we have at our school, 25% of our students are special education, equating to about 135 students. Each and every one of our 7 elementary schools in the district has its own charm and incredible team. Kootenai has a major focus on trauma-informed practice. Washington has an outdoor education classroom. Southside has a STEM lab. Sago hires kokanee for the fish hatchery. Northside and Hope have community members that support students in all ways possible. But what I want to share with you today is what truly makes Farm and Stidwell special and unique. Specialized opportunities for all. We start with our developmental preschool. Our smallest Wolfpack members are 3 and 4-year-olds. Our developmental preschool works with the infant and toddler program to identify students through Child Find, which is a screening and evaluation process that determines whether preschool-aged children and students have a learning disability or need extra support in preparing for kindergarten. Side by side with their typically developing peers, the preschool team serves students with disabilities in small group settings with OT, occupational therapy, PT, physical therapy. The services are on-site, integrated into the classroom. We currently have around 40 preschoolers, but some have just moved to Sago, which is fantastic. And then we move to our life classrooms. Our life program is a huge part of Farm and Stidwell. It's one of my personal favorite places to spend time. There are 23 students between 2 classrooms, led by 2 special education teachers. There are 9 support staff members, and the therapists are on site. Farm and Stidwell is home base to 2 district occupational therapists, a physical therapist, and a speech and language pathologist. Again, all through an integrated approach, serve students during academics and their specials. Our life skills students also have an adaptive PE class that you can see here that is designed to meet the needs of each student specifically. The goal of our life program is to serve and provide students with significant intellectual disabilities so that they may learn the skills of independence and self-determination. It's comprehensive and an intentional program. We focus on the high quality areas of life like career independence, functional academics, emotional and social well-being. There's also a community-based instruction piece, which means the students get to learn how to use maps and public transportation, using a crosswalk, going grocery shopping, going swimming, going to the library. At Farmstead Well, we believe in inclusion. We're grounded in inclusion, and our life skills students spend time in our general education classrooms. They also join us for field trips. They eat in the lunchroom, and they have as much time possible as they're with their general education peers at recess and school-wide events. Our Beacon Classroom is a district-wide program for students with significant emotional behavior concerns. It serves students whose behavior is getting in the way of their education. Through one-on-one support and small group intervention, positive behavior is introduced and taught. The purpose of the program is to provide students the opportunity to become aware of, to learn about, and to change their negative behavior patterns in a safe environment. And there's no pictures of that one to protect the identity of those students. Our next program is our ELP program, our experiential learning classroom, and both teachers are here today. You may not know, but Farman is home to 2 multi-age experiential learning classrooms. The littles, as we refer to them, are 2nd and 3rd grade students. The bigs are 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students. And through the ELP, students are able to form close bonds with their classroom community and have the same teachers and classmates throughout the years. Instruction is delivered in small groups, flexible groups, and it's not uncommon to see a 3rd grader doing math at a 4th grade level or a 5th grade student doing 6th grade work. Students in the ELP also have a wide variety of project-based learning opportunities. They participate in outdoor school every fall for 6 weeks in conjunction with the Phoenix Zoo Land Trust and Pine Street Woods. Any child in the district can apply to be in the ELP. It's a lottery system that's held in April.
Sorry.
Our after-school program is another program I like to highlight. 4 years ago, the LPOSD secured a 21st Century Community Learning Center grant. It established an after-school program at Farmstead Well and Kootenai Elementary. Since then, they've added a program at Southside Elementary as well. And the program allows families to have a safe and engaging environment for kids after school hours. It's basically an extension of the school day. Our program has been filled to capacity for all 4 years, and there's a wait list. You can see some of the activities, and here's one that I'm super excited about. They have additional opportunities for tutoring, art, technology, outside play, STEM, and a full meal as well. The Music Conservatory partners and offers choir and drumming. But recently, the 2 high school students have been hired to work with our students on one-on-one tutoring for reading intervention, which is fantastic. Our school motto for positive behavior is the acronym PAUSE, polite, accountable, willing, and safe. As a school, we're working to guide our students to learn and grow with these characteristics. We emphasize being polite and willing with our ultimate goal of encouraging citizenship and community service. Recently, our students participated in Blankets of Hope, where more than 200 students wrote letters of encouragement and kindness to those experiencing homelessness. The notes, wrapped in fleece blankets, were delivered to community organizations and for those who need a little pick-me-up. Our students also spend time with our neighbors at the Life Care facility, singing carols at Christmas, writing cards, and making decorations for all of the holidays. In March, we will again partner with Bake for the Good, which is a King Arthur flower company who puts on a virtual assembly. We were fortunate enough to have it in person 3 years ago, but our last 2 have been virtual, where students learn to bake bread. They go through the process, they learn the math and the science components behind all of the bread baking process. Then they're given the ingredients to take home from King Arthur, and they bake bread with their families. We work with the Hoot Owl Soup Kitchen, and the students bring all the bread back and we donate it to the soup kitchen. Last year we had more than 100 families participate. In closing, I want to thank you for the opportunity to share what I love about Farmstead Well and all the programs that many people might not be aware of that are within our building. It's been a tough time for educators, and our team has stepped up to ensure that learning and growth are taking place regardless of the circumstances. From our kitchen team to our custodians, to our teachers, to our support staff, everyone at Farmingtonville really cares about student learning and doing whatever it takes to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I love getting that overview. It is so helpful, even just as a reminder, but there's always new things I learn. And I did see those blankets of hope because I saw they were being given out at Soup Kitchen, and it was an awesome program.
It was really cool.
Yeah,
it was in the paper last weekend, if you read about it, but we just found that project on Instagram and reached out, and there was a corporate sponsor that paid for all the blankets shipped into our school, and the kids
did the rest.
It was great.
Yeah. So are there any other questions for Betsy from Principal DeLacia from our board? No. Thank you again for coming and presenting. So we have 3 policies we're going to review as a board and discuss here, and that's our next agenda item. And we're going to start with policy 1010. It's very neutral. Title is organization and classification. And we have this brought tonight because it came up that we should discuss maybe what our sources are for legal powers, duties, and responsibilities. In this policy, it states that those derive from Idaho Constitution, state statutes, and rules. So I know that it has come up as conversation that there could be added to that, and I just want to open it up to the board to discuss that and ask for comments.
Well, I know that I'm assuming this is tied to the policy.
Yes.
That we talked about.
It is. It's tied. So Jalen makes a good point. We had a conversation about getting it on the agenda. It is also tied to policy 1205. And when we'll make a decision at any point that would impact one policy, if there's a trickle through to other policies that it would follow through to, then we would review those at the same.
Because I know on 1205 it doesn't list Idaho Constitution or the United States Constitution, either one of those. But here it does list Idaho Constitution. So I guess my concern would be to just somehow propose or talk about adding the United States Constitution as one of our guiding.
And so Jalen brought that up, and as I told him and then relayed to Kelly, let's have a conversation about that. We did get a phrase that, so we lobbed it to legal to just see, hey, what is a good way to add something like this where it's not going to be we're not going to put ourselves in a wrong wording, if you will. And I do have a possible addition we could make to this one. Something at the end here, sources, maybe in between the two legal powers, the sentence that starts, it's legal powers, duties, responsibilities that derive from the Idaho Constitution, state statutes, and rules. We could also say the board must also comply with the constraints and requirements of federal law and administrative rules as well as those of the U.S. Constitution. And then...
So is the question just consistency between the different policies?
But my question has nothing really to do with 1010. I didn't even know this existed. As I was reading 1205 is what came up to me. So this actually is new.
Yeah, you hadn't read this one before that. Yep. So when you're looking through the policies, they tend to be structured toward 1010 is the more broad. If I'm summarizing correctly, Kelly, you can add in since you do a lot more work on the nitty-gritty level. And then 1205 is specifically board structure. Let me just look at what it says. 1205 is called
School Board powers and duties.
Yeah. So it's like I was saying, we could look at the broader one first and then trickle it through.
Yeah, because the concern I had was in 1205. It says the board functioning within the framework of laws, court decisions, opinions of attorneys general, State Department of Education regulations, and similar mandates from the state and national levels of government, recognizing the authority of the state, fulfills its mission as a governing body, and then finishes that. But it doesn't list the Idaho State Constitution as part of our framework, or the U.S. Constitution, which I think are the supreme law of the land, over any mandates or other levels of government. So that was my concern, is we have all these other things listed in here, but excluding the U.S. Constitution and Idaho State Constitution. So that was my concern. 1010 was brought up. If we need to add it both places, I would recommend that. To me,
Is there any discussion?
So my question would be, would this be an opportunity to come up with a phrase that is consistent upon all policies, and that we review and update so I'm looking for consistency, not one versus another, and there's multiple. Is there a way to have it just, we follow this, local, state, federal laws, rules, etc.?
I think what I'm hearing you say is that if we're going to adapt it and adjust it at one place, that same language should be also found in the other policy. Is that what I?
Yeah, just consistent
Yeah.
across all policies. And
I
we
don't
want to take the time to review, so we're not making rules on
one
onesie,
without the
twosies, but
yeah.
maybe take an opportunity to review.
Do you know off the top of your head if this phrase of our sources that we rely on comes up in other policies? Because off the top of my head, I don't know that it does.
Well, and for clarification for Trustee Peters, when Chair Lewis asked me, the 1010 organization and classification is what I thought you were referencing based off what she asked. So that's the question I asked, to add the U.S. Constitution. It wouldn't be a problem, but that's your organization and classification of the board. That's where you derive your powers, essentially, and how you're organized, and where you get those from, which would be the U.S. Constitution, the state constitution. So to Trustee Sherman's point, adding it in one location, you guys could put it wherever you want, but 1010 is where I thought it would fit best.
Makes sense. That's the broad overarching policy that got, I guess.
Right, and to be clear, you were asking something that was a little more dialed down, and in my head I was like, well, if we're going to change it here in the more detailed duties and responsibilities, then let's first change it at the
higher level.
At the first point it comes up. But
so if I'm understanding it correctly, 1010 is the broad brushstroke of everything. 1205 would be covered under 1010. So if we say it in 1010.
Although I don't exactly know what 1205 title is, so I don't have that in front of me.
I know, I'm going to pass it down.
Yeah.
It's the board duties and powers and duties.
So it's almost, they're almost duplicative in what they're saying. One is organization and classification, and one is school board powers and duties. Probably derived both off of the same code. If you scroll down.
33300 series.
Yeah, so Title 33 is trustee, powers and duties, organization. Specifically, 33506 is organization and governance of the Board of Trustees.
Yeah.
Governance of schools, maintenance of schools, that's all Title 33.
So, just for trustees' sake and for those here, when we have a discussion like this, we're not taking action on it tonight, but we're saying as a board, do we want to see change? Do we want to understand this more? And I don't have a problem personally adding language that includes the U.S. Constitution, but I'd like to hear from other trustees if that is something they'd like to hear. I'll read this statement again so that you can get a sense of, at least at the 1010 level, what we would be talking about. And then I don't, I hear your point about some consistency in the language so that when we're reading it, it follows through from one to the other. We tend to do that on other policies when you adjust one if it impacts another. This statement says, let me put my glasses back on. The board must also comply with the constraints and requirements of federal law and administrative rules, as well as those of the U.S. Constitution.
Yep.
We don't, obviously we're not taking action on this tonight, but I'm happy to email you this phrase. What I don't want to do is have us start an email conversation because we can't discuss it separately outside of an open meeting. But it's on here as a first discussion. It's not even any changes being recommended at this time.
So maybe we propose, or we talk about just sending us that, we gather our thoughts, we bring it to the next time.
We can do that,
Would
certainly.
that be the best thing to do?
And-
Now that everybody's aware of it, kind of, or?
Yeah, are there any other?
I mean, I kind of have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Is there a concern, I guess, that it's not in, like, all of our policies? Like, I think it's an overarching, like, yes, we are, derive powers from the Constitution,
Right.
both state and out of the United States, and I feel like it's covered. It's kind of redundant, in my opinion.
Are you asking if there's ever been a case where it hasn't, where we haven't been following the U.S. Constitution?
Right. Like, I guess I'm just not 100% following what
The purpose
like
of
you.
that is.
Yeah, you just want to
Oh,
see it.
I don't think that it is, has anything to do with that we wouldn't be following it or haven't been.
Right.
But my concern is that if we're gonna list words like mandates and State Department of Education regulations, then why don't we just list also the supreme law that supersedes all these things, that being the United States Constitution? That was my concern.
And it's sort of implied, in fact, in this 1205 school board powers and duties, it's implied in the statement, national levels of government, both state and national levels of government.
Chair Lewis?
Yep.
If I could
Yes.
make a recommendation here that I could do some work for the board and bring it back to you for a next meeting in
Sure.
two questions. I believe it's probably written the way that it is because school districts, as well as other local governments, really derive their power directly from the state government.
Right.
That's one of the state's main purposes there. So that's probably the way it's written. But also, the question I hear is if this were to be implemented, putting in words about adding the U.S. Constitution into 1010, is that then overarching so that would be implied in every other policy, so we're not going back and reviewing every policy just to put the word U.S. Constitution in every one?
So that's a good question, yes.
I will do some groundwork for you and bring that back for a report for
Okay.
next.
And remind me to share this written phrase that I've
Okay.
shared twice verbally, but it's hard to come back to later.
I think you have a really good example of that, and we'll get to it later. But when we had originally had a draft of the parental rights, I thought was a pretty good example of the language, and it's mandated to adhere to laws, rules, regulations, including Constitution, State of Idaho, and then it walks through all of those different parameters. And I guess when I'm looking at any of these policies that we're creating, I like them to be as simple as possible. And I think that that's something that just as we're reviewing
Clean the
these and going
language up,
forward,
yeah.
is making sure that the language is as simple as possible. And then anything that refers to the state, federal, so forth, that it's separate and it's easy to determine that that's separate, and here's the link. So I think this is a really great opportunity. Is there an umbrella that encompasses all of these, where we can put that phrase in one at the top, and then over the years going forward, as things come up, maybe remove language because it's covered at a broader language, at a broader or higher level that encompasses everything. So when you're doing their research, that's what I would all also be reviewing and like to see. So it's simplifying.
Well, I will move on to the second discussion item, but I think we have a good spot to move forward on that one. Yeah. So the second thing I want to talk about as a board, and especially for sort of the just awareness piece for 2 new trustees, is policy 1250, which is our policy on committees. Now, hold on, I have to pull up the right one because they're all mixed up on my table. So, this is a question that's come up, sort of like how are we using committees and should we have other committees in place? As you see, we have had a practice of having advisory committees. It's been referenced tonight in reference to curriculum. It was referenced with potential new hiring situation. Advisory committees have been utilized, organized, tasked with a certain job, and then within a time frame accomplish, what's asked of them based on a certain deadline, or I'm summarizing. But Tom, do you have anything to add to that before discussion to give some framework for how the committees are used?
Yeah, I would say probably the best example of the last committee that was created by the direction of the board would have been a facilities committee, probably 5 years ago.
We had an ELA committee too, then.
Well, outside of curriculum.
Yeah, outside of curriculum.
Outside of curriculum, which is we have a different process when we do a curricular review to involve parents and community members. So there are those committees as well that will be asked and invited to look at beyond curriculum. But the one example I was thinking of was the facilities committee. And I can just honestly say that probably over the last 3 years, the board has not really directed me to create any committees. We haven't really been doing any curricular reviews. We've just been hanging on.
Yes.
So just leave it at that. So bottom line is that we, now I do know that reading this policy, the facilities committee, though it's inactive, is probably still in place, because you as a board would have to decide to disband that committee. So, though it has not been active, there has not been any facilities committees or any other committees at this time over the last 2 or 3 years. So, I think this is clear on you as board members of directing the superintendent of schools of what committees you would. And it does say, advisory committees be organized when appropriate. So again, you as a board would have to decide when it would be appropriate for you to have a committee, and obviously no more than 2 of you could sit on that committee.
Yeah, that is another point, is that it's always been 1 or 2 trustees sit in on a committee at any one time, so that we're not having a meeting. But the other point I will make is that advisory committee is an accurate term. These aren't standing committees the way you might see in state legislature. These are advisory committees specifically tasked with a time parameters set around it and a task that they've been asked to do. So we don't have for example, the facility committee may not have officially been dissolved, I'm not sure, but they're not, their task was completed, and so they're not meeting or doing any work.
So then, if the board does appoint a committee for the purpose of coming back and reporting to the board, then that would be, there would have to be a time with a specific purpose of what the board would want that committee to do.
Yeah. So were there questions about the policy itself, or about the practice, or thoughts about what the future looks like for committees here?
Well, I don't necessarily have any questions about the policy.
Sure.
But I guess it's gonna probably be a discussion about whether or not we feel committees are, not appropriate, but necessary, and how we view that.
Sure.
And I feel, talking with constituents and hearing them on the phone and emails, that there are a few areas I think that a committee with a designated time, not a standing committee forever, but
Yeah.
To establish a committee for a year or whatever it might look like, to look at and overview and help us with certain things and accountability and research and stuff that maybe we just don't have the time to dive into, you know. And I mentioned it in the email to propose this, and a curriculum committee I think would be great, even before we've selected one, so that parents and citizens can look at that and see if we're abiding by State Bill 377. And are we or are we not, even though it's a standard we're meeting, you know. Maintenance and Development Committee might be a good idea. I know we've got proposals on here today for building upgrades, and try to even look at 5-year plans, look further out than all of a sudden we have a leaky roof.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A committee like that, a financial review committee. I know we have a CFO, but I gotta be honest, when I hear her speak, she's great, she knows everything, but it's like drinking water in a fire hose, you know, sopping up the ocean with a towel. It's
a lot of info.
It's a lot, and I think that getting the public involved in some of these areas would be wise, would be helpful, would be, I think it would bring a lot more good than it would any level of negative, to be honest. And so that's kind of why I proposed that. Even maybe a committee of our relation, the district's relation to the public, and getting people involved, whether it's donations or substitute teachers, because how many times has substitutes last year been on the agendas, right? Mm-hmm. And how do we maybe even formulate plans to fix that problem? And so
Now, I will remind the board that a lot of the discussion that is happening is actually administrative duties. So we task, as a board, we're responsible for a certain level of authority, and we task our superintendent with a lot of the administrative level. So by that I mean, we're not getting super involved in what's happening in each individual school. That's through the superintendent meeting with administrators. So there is a certain level where some of our oversight is not down in the weeds, but a little higher up. Is there any other feedback on this conversation?
I have a question, specifically to that, and Trustee Peters, like, what is a committee gonna do to tell us that substitutes don't make enough money? Like, yep, we can have a committee of 1 million people or a committee of 5 and say, yeah, they don't make enough money. Like, I understand that, but what is a committee of citizens going to, how are they going to change that? I mean, we're there. Yeah. I'm by no means am I poo-pooing the idea of getting more involvement. I'm 100% on board with that, but there's certain things that, like just adding another layer of bureaucracy is certainly not going to solve the problem. No. Like, and I would believe that everybody sitting at these tables and in these chairs fully understand that, yeah, there's a funding problem here. But short of having a committee member that's a billionaire that just wants to dump money into it, I don't know how we're going to fix that through a committee. Like, and perhaps that's a drilled down ideal on something that, that's a tough one to solve. I get what you're saying about, we need to have committees on certain things. But
that was just an example.
Right.
I mean, the example was that being tied in with our community relations.
Right.
And connecting, getting stuff in the paper, like, hey, this is what we need, more public eye, letting the public know, listen, you can be a substitute.
Okay.
You know, like something that, that was just an example that would encompass that committee of public relations type of, I don't know if there's a better term.
No, I get it. Okay.
You know what I mean?
No, I see what you're saying.
It wasn't specifically a substitute teacher committee.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Now,
that
I
makes more
will
sense.
also say that the advisory committee is information gathering without any authority on its own.
Yeah.
So it's a reporting back sort of policy.
And I think there's been a lot of debate on whether CRT is in the curriculum or not, and we all have our knowledge of that or lack of, or however that pans out in our discussion, but I think having even a committee in that to establish terminology and wording would be really helpful, you know, if we don't, as trustees, spend the time to do it ourselves and know it and make those changes with curriculums or however we need to do that, you know.
So now I would also add that there's a difference between public forum, where we have a topic that is of such interest to the public that we raise it as a public forum. And that's different. Everyone's invited, and there's certain format for filling out questions and having dialogue. We have done those in the past based around certain issues. And that's sort of a different format for getting a relationship with the public going, because that engages anyone who wants to attend. A committee's set up and has a pretty set number from a pretty wide demographic of both parents, educators, business owners, you know. So it's definitely structured differently, and the more specific the task, the more effective a committee is, you know, rather than just a really widespread, hey, let's talk about any broad topic, more specific topic.
I can give you an example of a committee that's going to need to be formed, is our 5-year mission and vision.
We've done that too.
And that will be a community committee that was formed, and the next superintendent, that will be one of the first things of their responsibilities and duties, will be looking at that, and it's been 5 years, I believe, since we've had
and it
that.
is a community involved
So that is
by law.
It is, and we would have put a lot of information out to any stakeholder that wants to give input on the highest priorities for the school district, but then there's also going to be a smaller committee which will work on that and refine that data. So that is definitely a committee that will be formed soon.
Soon. So again, this is a discussion without necessarily an action, specifically no action attached to it because of where it is on our agenda. Is there any other discussion on this? We have one more policy we're gonna talk about, and obviously that's one on everybody's minds, the parental rights policy.
Can I jump in here? Because I think
Yes.
is appropriate timing.
Is this about policy 2425 or back on
2425.
Okay, so this policy is up for discussion. There's no action on it tonight, but we have all been given some information to kind of inform this next set of discussion, and that's on the survey. Go ahead.
So, I just had some notes. And boss, as I was reading, I read all of the comments, and I'd like to just start by saying that I think all of our board members have a valued lens.
Have a what?
A valued lens.
That's
And they represent a different view on the world than the group that they're responsible to. And I really want to make sure that everyone who participates understands and has a respect for the dignity of the individual and their value system, regardless of what that is. And I just wanted to start by saying how very thankful I am to have this group and their experience and what brought them. And with that being said, we had some really interesting opinions and viewpoints.
All over the map.
Two pretty separate realms. And I found myself really asking and looking at the gap in between. And really asking, what is a majority and what is a minority? And what do people really want? And is it an us them, or is it a community? And I think that if you look at us as a board, we are a community, and we're really here to try and do good things for our kids.
Agreed.
So with that being said, I then had to look at the tone and the negativity and the positivity and the responses and really ask what is the intent of what a person is trying to say versus what is the impact of what they're saying. And I think that many people have an unintended impact, that what they're trying to say is very different than what they say. And that can be in tone, in a verbal conversation, and I've had several with people on the phone. And it can also be very different when it's written in black and white. And so I want to make sure that as we're discussing these, that we're really cautious and careful to try and get to what that person really means. And really listen to each other. Because I think that every person here has value. And their input's really important. We just need to hear it. When we look at the different policies and the levels, I've written a lot of policies. I always put in the language, you know, state, federal, all the way, depending on what organization I'm writing it for. And I find that this policy was really well written in terms of making sure I felt that we hit a lot of the concerns that people had. But depending again on that lens, people either were very embracing or very opposed, or not. And it didn't really seem to, I didn't see a total consistency on what people's beliefs were. So that was really interesting. Because it is so legally written. And it had to be, because in some ways it referred to so many laws. One of the things that is interesting about this is that it's going to change. We heard on our legislative call last night that there's many new bills coming through and there's many new things that may impact our community. Or not. We don't know. So my question that I asked of the people I've spoke with was, is there anything new on this policy that we've created that is not already covered by state, federal, local, any law that's already on the books and referred to? And I couldn't find something that was new to us, except that we are recognizing and acknowledging there's all of these different places. And I liked that we had a reference sheet, because as I'm trying to learn these, I'm sure you're similar, and you're trying to figure out, oh, which one applies and which one does not, that having a list was super helpful. I loved that reference, and then I could look and say, oh, if I'm looking at this policy, then all of these would apply. So I love having a reference sheet. But it would be my preference that we not say we're going to have, at this time, put this in place. I would prefer that we maybe try and have a summary of here's the intent and purpose of having a parent's right and responsibilities piece, very short summary, and that further up in the umbrella, we have a policy that says we abide by all of these things consistently. And that might solve the question that you have as well. But I don't think we want to, today, try and put this in place.
We can't.
Right.
It's not an action item, but it did give us the opportunity to see the comments that came through in the survey, the diversity of them. I mean, they really are quite varied in their response. It is on the website, or will be soon.
It is not on the website because it's not an adopted policy.
That's not what I meant. The responses from the survey, will they be available?
You didn't direct me to post those, but I can make them available.
So
Do you
my
want it under the policy tab?
My concern with that would be several people did put their names on there.
Oh,
Yeah, there's
And
names
that's
on a lot of
true.
these.
That's true.
If we want to publicly put them out, I think we should ask all of those people first, because I
No, I
don't think
agree.
that they knew that that would be publicly released.
Right, we start publishing
So
anonymous things, that's not gonna go.
it's in
That's
our,
okay.
yeah, it's in our packet, but not on the website anywhere. But I will say that one of our intentions with setting up the Parental Bill of Rights was to consolidate all information into one area.
Yeah.
So if it does seem like, oh, this is redundant, this is listed everywhere else, that's accurate. is information
Right.
that's available elsewhere, and yet it helps consolidate and gives parents a place to go for.
Right. But is there a way to do that that's even more simplified? Just, here's what it covers, follow these.
Go
things
here, 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 and
years.
here.
Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah,
we're
except
really-
it leaves people hunt and peck, which
Exactly.
is not,
What we're trying to avoid.
that's what is cumbersome to parents who aren't used to working through our whole policy manual. So, I get what you're saying, and I think that what you're saying is why we exactly did
So,
this.
Chair Lewis.
Yes.
If I'm hearing Trustee Sherman, maybe in this same policy, a little more just a intent and purpose at the very beginning, in, I don't know,
That this is a code.
layman's terms.
Yeah.
Something of just saying that we're trying to consolidate what's already Idaho code, would be something that we could definitely look at.
Yeah, because there were quite a few comments like that, like,
Right,
this
right.
is already in
Yes.
there.
And it,
Yeah,
and it may have
there
been
was.
the very
Yeah.
first time that a constituent actually read a school board policy. And if you looked at that for the first time, you're going, that is a little confusing.
And there were 15% of the comments had to do with, can you make this in English, please?
Right.
So something maybe to kind of explain it.
Summary almost.
Yeah, that would be good.
I mean, even something that says, you know, it is our intent, you know, that we, you know, that we encourage parents and guardians to be involved in their students' activities based on that, you know,
Yeah,
the section
right.
that says parents and guardians do this, and then say, if you'd like further information, please see, and just list them out, or, you know, a record sheet.
Chair Lewis, there was one
Yeah.
more thing that you had, you as a board had tasked me with for clarification, and
Yes.
that was the new Idaho code that just went into place last April.
Yeah.
And there was some interpretation on what that was really saying.
That's right.
And what that, and again, this is an interpretation that I got. Okay, so I think it's wise for us to wait to see what legislative action comes out on parental rights during this session, because this may be amended even further.
Right.
But with this, the interpretation that I received was this is basically not taking you as a school board's local control away from you, but it is parents' rights from, and it even says it down here, when we're talking about Idaho code concerned with martial law or active duty or state disasters. So it is not taking your right away if you, as a board, wanted a local control measure, but which there isn't any. But what I'm saying is that it is more geared towards a statewide, governor-wide order, is what I was put here. But yeah, and I won't put my personal opinion in here, but I just forced removal from the home. I scratched my head on that one, so.
So, explain that to me, because that was my question.
Right.
If this was implying that they are still able to do these things?
No,
No,
they are
it's
not.
saying at
They are
no time do they
not.
have to
No
write
time
those.
ever.
But you as a board could, this is not taking your power away from a local control as a board.
Gotcha.
So it implies that we can disobey this statute?
No, we can't.
Because if that says that, how can we?
I can go back and get further interpretation.
Okay.
To be honest with you, when I reached out to this, I still think there's a lot of confusion statewide. I think this was put through very kind of quickly at the very end of the session last April, was my interpretation, and then signed into law. So I think that's probably why the House and the Senate will be revisiting this and trying to get clarification around it. So my advice is to wait.
And there is some, right, there is some more discussion to be had as things come out of the legislature. As it adjusts, we will, of course, discuss at that level.
The only thing that I think would be important to have in there that is, I'm sure, documented elsewhere, but I want to revisit that, is, if somebody has a concern, what those levels are, and just making sure that that's super clear.
Mhm.
So, teacher, principal, superintendent, board, and making sure that it specifies, and this was a concern that somebody brought up that I thought was really valid, is if somebody has an issue, they don't necessarily want to make that be public if it's their child.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
making sure that we
Yeah.
specify that it would be executive, so it's closed and it's more
Which
private
it
for that
is.
child, which it
Right.
is, but just specifying that piece.
And the chain of command that they first
Yeah.
talk to their
And that was a little gray, so
teacher,
that is, we
principal,
own that, that should be clear.
administrator. Yeah.
That was a concern I had somebody bring up to me too, because in the paragraph number 5, it does talk about parents when they address objections. It puts academic issues and mandate policy issues together as this is the chain of command when you have these issues, and maybe even separating those. Like if you have an academic issue, go to your teacher. But if it's a mandate policy issue, you don't want to go to your teacher. You know what I mean? So that's not necessarily the chain of command for issues outside of academics, like bringing the teacher involved.
So are you speaking specifically to like, if there's a problem with what the teacher's doing, obviously you need to circumnavigate that.
I don't know. I guess any
They would have the
policy or
right to do
mandate or
that.
anything
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
You have the right to go to the supervisor, go to the
Yeah,
principal.
right. That's-
Yeah.
So I mean, you could, if it's a mandate or policy issue, skipping that chain of command
Right.
and going to
That
whoever's
might be
above
the-
them.
Mhm.
Which I think, parent or guardian would hopefully understand. If they've got a specific issue with an action of a teacher, that they would
But I do think that that is
definitely
something
have the
that,
right to go to that specific teacher supervisor to address the issue, which is typical. I mean, that's how these things are handled. in
but let's
one-off.
verify it's written that way, because that is
Right.
the one area that is very specifically within control and public concern, I think. And it may be, but I had a few questions on that as well, so I wanted to verify that. But
Could you clarify what that question was? The questions you were referring to. I got the
Yeah.
paragraph here. I see the statement.
Yeah.
But it sounded to me like you had constituents bring concern to you.
did you have that as well?
Yeah, so basically the whole idea is, in that paragraph 5, it talks about academic issues and mandate policy issues. And they lump
That
those.
they're both different.
They
Yeah,
lump those
that they're
together as follow the chain of command if you have these issues. And maybe just separating those out, like,
He's saying there should be a different chain of command when it's a mandate issue.
right.
Got it.
And if we're gonna put it in writing that specific, then it should be specific both ways, or leave
And I will
room
say
for it to be
that
outside of
wording is
that.
straight out of a policy, so if we're talking about changing that, we'd be changing it at policy level as well. Right, not just here at the parental bill of rights.
So what this person said, and I thought it was well written, is basically in their viewpoint that the parental Bill of Rights established a dispute resolution process. That was part of what was in that policy.
Paragraph 5.
And the way in which it's written, it ends with, airing your grievances. And so just having that be clarified if and when we release this. And having a little bit more detail on if it's this one, here's how you do it. If it's this one, here's how you do it, just so it's really clear on what those steps would be.
And it protects the teacher too. I think there's a lot of issues that they shouldn't necessarily
at the
have to be
teacher level.
involved in. Like,
Yeah.
they shouldn't mediate certain things,
Yeah, I think the intent is that if there's a concern in the classroom, it's usually best could be solved at the teacher level.
Totally.
I mean, I think that's the
Yeah.
intent, but I
Absolutely.
understand what you're saying here.
Without dragging the evening on too long, this is another thing that we are going to come back and revisit, especially as certain issues are discussed at state level. Read through these again in relation to what you're seeing here so that we can have a sense of how we want to go forward with this policy, incorporating some of the comments that are made here. Superintendent Albertson getting back to us on some information and keeping an eye on what's happening in Boise. So is everybody comfortable moving on?
Yeah, so we're just going to wait till the state does all their things and
Well-
then we revisit, is kind of what you're proposing.
We can keep massaging and adjusting this without putting it firmly into policy. I'd like to wait another month or so until we know what's happening.
Yeah, because I
at the-
have, I don't know, 4 or 5 different bullet points that I saw coming up a lot at different times through constituents. So should we wait to bring those up, or are you saying?
No, if you want to catalog those right now
Okay.
and get them on the,
One was the public comment part that has been addressed many, many times, and even allowing for,
wait, that's not in the parental rights thing.
well, as they address an issue, say with their kid,
Yeah.
and they shouldn't have to do that in public comment.
Agreed.
But it's
Okay.
listed in the policy to do that. And so we should, if it's gonna be specifically and say that, we should at least put a loophole in there that they
Oh.
can go for, ask for executive session or something. So they don't
Yes.
feel pressure to like show up, put their name on and tell us the problem with their kid.
And actually, when we do have something that's specific to a student, it does not ever happen at public comment. I'm
Right.
sorry.
But we
Yeah.
just need to specify that, because the way
That
it's
was my-
written,
that was
I
the
gotcha.
way you're
It's
reading
in there
it,
that way.
it's great.
Yep.
So that was one. I had quite a few questions, and you saw the comments as well about the sex ed curriculum and how that cookie crumbles. What does that address? Is it just basic biology? And that might be a whole separate curriculum discussion, so we can leave that at that. But I saw that coming up a lot
Yeah,
in there.
it pops up a lot.
And then it lists the medical, let's see here, trying to pull it up. Forced removal of a child, forced medical action of a child, and that's state law, that's great, but is there, and this was a concern brought to me with masking per se, that would we as a board find a loophole to say that requiring masks for a pandemic is not like necessarily a medical thing, so that would be a loophole to say that we can mandate masks. So somehow wording that in here to say including medical masking for pandemic.
We have had the right as a board of trustees, as you know, to legally mandate masks or not, not when we took the mandate off. And those were both within both state and, that is the local control that's left.
So is that a medical action, masking?
So
Because if it is, then we are not allowed to do that, right? Because it's listed here now.
that's getting back to the way you're reading
Back
this
to the
is not
interpretation
accurate.
of your control as a local board.
Right, so we
So
are
everybody
allowed
wants to,
do it.
like it or not, from the governor down, wants to make this board make all the decisions.
Yeah.
So then
That's the
what I
simplest
was-
way I can put it.
Right.
So this doesn't say what you're asking.
Right, so that was what I was gonna say, is that if we do have the power, autonomy to
The local
work
boards do,
outside
right?
that line a little bit, I guess, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Then it was recommended that we add that in here, that we would not see and use masking as a medical action and include that like in here, as we wouldn't force that. So anyway, I
Okay.
support that as well, but that was just a comment, so I'm throwing that out there for the
Okay.
record. Critical race theory curriculum pops up 3 or 4 times in the policy. It was recommended to me, and I agree with it as well, that CRT should be listed by name, and that we also should list House Bill 377 as we list the other state statutes, that it does outlaw
But-
CRT, right?
And I want to be very respectful here, Chair Lewis, but House Bill 377, which was moved into Idaho Code 33138, that is in our controversial topics policy,
Okay.
which we have a second reading on. It's not in the parental rights, it's in the controversial topic.
Is it listed in there specific by
It-
name yet?
It is not,
Okay.
but and I just say that
Which is coming up down
By-
further in our agenda.
keeping, sometimes keeping policies broad that can
Oh.
be interpreted to anything instead of being very specific.
Right.
If the board wishes, then I would recommend that that would be a separate policy all on its own and not be
Rolled
in
into
the
that.
academic freedom policy.
Yeah, I think that just, if I may, to this policy will end up being, 1,000 pages long if we try to hit every single thing. That's why we use broad brushstrokes on some of these, and then delve into that deeper in different policy, which I think we want to be very careful to make sure, otherwise, policy is going to be even harder to follow.
Right.
So that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, I guess the concern that I heard multiple times, and as I was reading and hearing comments too, that it's, if we're gonna list certain things specifically, then we should list the other important things specifically also. That's kind of the idea, and if 377, House Bill 377 needs to be somewhere else, I think it should be as it is a state.
We just haven't been using, we've been.
Idaho Code 30.
It moved, when the governor signed it, it moved away from the House Bill to an
It's
Idaho
not called,
code.
so it's Idaho
It's now
Code
in code.
33.
I think it's 33, 138.
Yeah, so it's no longer referred to as House Bill. That's what he's
It's
saying.
just, which will be cross-referenced. During policy updates, new code gets cross-referenced
Okay.
for the backing of, the code backing of the policy.
And I thought that we were referencing what was in 2340. Okay, are there any other bullet points that we want to get on the table here? I've heard Pearlie, do you have anything to add?
I think it's pretty well covered. It's gonna be a tough one, no matter what we do.
I
And
know, as we've seen.
As Tom said, what the state legislature dumps on us, that's what we're gonna have to deal with.
Yeah. I've heard from both of you, I've heard from everyone. Are we comfortable?
Yes, ma'am.
So discussion. I will hear a motion for consent agenda at this time.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. So we have quite a bit to go over that is in our board action items. And that starts with the first one, which is the approval of sale of school buses. We are already at, we're gonna have a deep meeting tonight. So Matt Kaler, or James Kaler, geez, I'm combining you and Matt, sorry Matt.
You guys are now.
Matt Deal, James Kaler.
We work right next to
I
each
know,
other,
and I
so-
was looking at both of you right over each other. So hello, thank you for coming, Director of Transportation, and we have in front of us.
Yeah, so as you can see by the request, we have 2 older buses that we decommissioned. They're no longer in service. We replaced them with bus 73 and 74. They're just taking up valuable space in our lot, and I'd like somebody else to own them.
Deal.
Is there any questions about that? This is obviously not the first time we've seen this as a board, but, okay. So, with that not confusing issue in front of us,
I make a motion that we approve the sale of these 2 buses that are taking up too much space.
Thank you.
I second that.
okay, it's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes, thank you. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 approval to bid. These are facility approvals, and I'm going to invite Matt Deal up.
Hi.
Hello, Director of
Thank you for having me.
Facilities. Yep, thank you. So we'll just begin with the first.
The first one
Is the gymnasium roof.
Approval to bid a roof replacement for middle school. We have a contract in place for design specifications. I think a couple of you were touring with Mr. Albertson when
The garbage can.
when we had a leak. I mean, we put temporary repairs on those now, but we've been stringing along that roof as long as we can, and it's completely time for replacement now.
And a reminder that these approvals to go to bid are just that. It's to go out to bid, not an approval of a specific bid. Just a reminder.
So, is there any questions?
Are there any questions on this first approval to bid? If not, I'll hear a motion.
I make a motion to approve going to bid for the Sandpoint Middle School gymnasium re-roof.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
The only discussion I would be is, can you just allude to, I know that there was public comment asked about where the funds are coming for all these items coming up? Can you just throw
Yeah,
that out
that
there for
one,
us?
so each year, well, this year we have $200,000 in a capital improvement fund, so it will come from that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's budgeted through it. It's budgeted from.
And I see that on my thing here, but I was
To say
wanting
for the-
everybody to know.
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
Is there any other discussion?
I would just like to make a statement. I understand why this roof is bad. I went to school in it. And my roof is leaking too.
So with that-
It's old. That building is old.
So, yes, that is, so with that, I will hear a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes, so we're gonna move straight on to the next one, which is the Sandpoint High School locker room.
Okay, you know, just to explain a little more too, the architect and engineers working on design all these projects. We're trying to get them out to bid as soon as we can, so we can get competitive pricing. This goes for all these. Competitive pricing, there's also gonna be lead time on procurement of materials. Think about like custom ventilation equipment, you know, for specific use. It's not things sitting in warehouses ready to go. So we're trying to get this stuff out to bid so then we can get a contract in place with contractors. Say, yeah, well, you can't start until June 12th, but
Yeah.
you've got the job. It's got to be completed by August 15th. So that's why I'm bringing these to you now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, we're looking at the second one, and,
So the locker rooms at Sandpoint High School, there's a discrepancy in size of the locker rooms. So for many years, I think 9 or 10 years, we've had the girls using the larger locker room, which happens to have urinals and different things, you know, for a men's locker room. So this is to make the larger locker room a proper women's locker room. The men's locker room, proper men's locker room, and add urinals. And this comes down to the size of space and Title IX issues. And if you had deeper questions on that, and I know Mr. Albertson might have some more background for you, but that's what this project's about. We do have a contract in place, design is underway.
I would just like to add, it's also at the same time to make them
ADA
compliant.
Yeah. Good point.
What
When they-
part of them are, parts of them are not ADA now?
Size of the stalls.
yeah.
So
to make
when
wheelchairs
the school was built on a very tight budget back in the early 90s, and yeah, there was things that didn't get done the way they should have been done.
Well, and I think really the high school was built just before
Some of those laws came in,
ADA
yeah.
came into play, just before.
So without too much down in the weeds, do I have a motion, or?
I make a motion to approve going to bid to reconfigure the gymnasium locker rooms at Sandpoint High School.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Now is there any discussion?
Again, could you just allude to where the cost, where the funds are?
Yeah, this is, the engineer's estimate is $87,000 to $99,000 to be paid for by general fund reserves.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. And we're gonna just keep plugging through. We have 3 more, and the next one is,
Okay, the next one is approval to bid Sandpoint Middle School and Northside Elementary School special education therapy room upgrades, including ventilation and heating. These are rooms that the specialists use for maybe speech language therapies, psychologists, maybe counselors. And that's not my realm, so I don't know, but it's that it's that, and that's being funded through ARPA funds. And these
Title
schools just
IX,
really need a better space that has privacy, and sound can be an issue. The one is off the gym is super noisy in there, so there'll be some treatments to help with that. So these are old spaces. One of them at Northside actually used to be a little shower room. And
Okay.
so
Was that the one that had the, okay.
Yeah, we looked at it.
So it'll make nice spaces. These spaces are, anywhere from 50 to 70 years old or something like that, and really haven't had anything done but, painting and things
Yeah.
like that.
So, motion, there is room for discussion, but need a motion on the table first.
I make a motion to approve going to bid for upgrades to the therapy rooms at Sandpoint Middle School and Northside Elementary School.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Matt, you're
So
back.
I actually
Oh,
would say aye. I would
oh,
like to vote no at this one.
okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, there's, motion passes. Sorry.
Okay, the next one is approval to bid for ventilation improvements. So new mechanical heating and ventilation equipment will be installed in this gymnasium. Southside Elementary, Washington Elementary will have ventilation equipment replaced or added in 7 classrooms. Ventilation equipment will be replaced in the field house of Sandpoint High School. Heating and ventilation equipment will be replaced at Lake Ponderay High School in the main building. Ventilation equipment will be replaced at the district office. Ventilation and heating equipment will be added to the gymnasium at Northside Elementary, as well as replacing 6 radiators with forced air ventilation units. Updates to the direct digital control systems will be made at all district sites to allow better control of monitoring of HVAC systems. We may have to monitor the scope of work, depending on bids and cost estimates.
Okay.
On the direct digital controls, so we currently have some computer systems where we can monitor and turn things off and on, scheduling for energy management, that kind of thing. Those systems are now like 13 or 14 years old, so the language the computers use and the Java and everything, it doesn't work right anymore. So it's updating those things. It's not replacing the whole system, it's updating what's there.
Okay.
And adding some connectivity and controllability to existing systems.
Okay.
We have contract in place. The state of Idaho has approved using the ESSER dollars for these specific projects. This was also part of the budgeting discussion and the ESSER spending plan
Right.
last year.
Yep. Okay, so I'll
Any
hear.
questions?
Well, let's get a motion first, and then we can have discussion if there's more questions. Anyone? Motion?
I make a motion to approve going to bid for ventilation upgrades for LPOSD facilities.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Well, I wasn't on the board last time when this all went. That's why I'm voting no to this one and last one. I don't feel the acceptance of the ESSER dollars and ARPA funds is necessary. So I'm just making that clear for the record. And I mean, I would have voted no for it then as well. But yeah, I think that if we can work within our means without taking more Fed money would be great.
It would just come out of taxpayer dollars.
Which it does now. That's what Fed dollars are.
That's more burden on local. Is there any other discussion? I'll go for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nope.
That motion passes. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, fifth one.
Last one. Okay.
Last one. So I'm asking for approval to bid for child nutrition warehouse campus improvements. So the current facility is just, it's too small and inefficient to handle the volume of food that we receive all the food and we warehouse it and then pull the old orders and send it back out to the schools. You know, sometimes 20,000 pounds a week of frozen food. Well, now in our freezers, every box is hand loaded. So this will enable us to actually put pallets away. We'll still have to manually pull the orders to deliver them to the schools, but this is a scale of purchasing improvement. This is working conditions. This is safety for worker improvements, and it's being paid for with unanticipated revenue from meals from last school year. The volume of meals is greater, so it's a really unique opportunity to make improvements to this facility.
So can I have a motion for this latest?
I make a motion to approve going to bid for upgrades to the child nutrition warehouse facility and to surplus the retired refrigeration equipment.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I guess I just have a question. The last year and a half, once we've added, I say we, the nation has added meals for every kid, every child, breakfast and lunch. Is that when you guys, I mean, is that when you've seen that big jump in need of the facility over the last year and a half?
It's always been really hard on the staff back there, incredibly difficult. But the volume has increased dramatically, dramatically. So, yeah, it has increased a lot, but it's never been a really good situation for the employees.
Right.
Okay.
You know, in that facility, actually, it didn't even have a restroom until summer before last.
Yeah.
They had an actual porta potty for the last like 15 years. We got them a restroom. Now we need to give them a little bigger space to work.
Yeah.
It's asking a lot.
Is there any other discussion or questions for Matt? I will take a vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. So that motion passes. We have what you'll see. Thank you so much, Matt. In front of you is, it is very rare that we have 4 of these right in a row, but each one requires its own motion. Each of these are for those school closures we had, and the dates are on each of them. So I will hear a motion to approve, and we'll just move through the 4.
Make a motion that we approve resolution 22-02 school closure.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did I hear you?
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, I just want to make sure. Motion passes. Thank you. I will hear another. Very quiet.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2203 school closure.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'll hear the 3rd.
Tanya, you're up.
Moving down the road.
I make a motion to approve resolution 22-04 school closure.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion passes. One more.
I move to approve resolution 22-05 certificate of school closure.
I second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Efficient board work. We have a second reading of policy, and I'll turn this over to Superintendent Albertson. This is on policy 2340.
Right. So I presented to you 2340, controversial issues and academic freedom, making sure that it was up to code. So bottom line is, this is where, when we're referencing House Bill 377, it was signed into Idaho Code as 33-138, Dignity and Non-Discrimination in Public Education. And the last time I went over with you what was added to our previous policy and highlighted it, and
Right.
rather than me just reading it to you again, I don't know if you, are we gonna-
On a second reading, what we've discussed and brought forward at the first reading is usually written in adjustments made. So this is our opportunity to adopt this policy.
Well, is this discussion, if I may? Was this the one, was there like a small typo, one or two toward the end, or was that the other one?
That was the other one.
Okay.
Yes.
This one,
Sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry.
when you flip through it, you'll see the content that was added is in bold.
Bold stuff is new, and then
The
strike
bold
through
is
stuff
new,
that's
and it is exactly what we saw last time, minus any, or with any changes that had been requested, which there weren't. So,
Was this the one, so you're saying that House Bill 377, House Code, now, whatever,
It's in
I
here.
guess.
33-138.
That
yeah.
is that 33-138 is in here now.
Correct. So if you look at, it's bolded, but it's in number 3. So,
the language from it on page
language
2.
on 3. Teachers will not attempt directly or indirectly to limit or control students' judgment concerning any issues. That was already in our old policy. The new part that came in from the new code was including but not limited to requiring students to personally affirm, adopt, or adhere that any race is inferior or superior or on inherent responsibilities regarding sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin. Then the next sentence was what was in policy,
Yep.
and then there's a part that just says that this shall include not arguing that individuals should be treated adversely on the basis of any attributes listed above. 4 was in place, and then they added the 5, which is if we needed to collect some demographic information, we could. So really, that is making sure that our policy is up to Idaho code.
Yep.
That was just passed last April.
Yeah. So I will hear a motion to adopt this second reading of policy 2340. Adopt the policy.
I make a motion that we adopt policy 2340, controversial issues and academic freedom with revisions.
And I'll second that.
It's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion on this one? Okay, that motion passes. Oh. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Sorry, I got a
Thank you.
little ahead of myself. We have opportunity for announcement if there's any administrators not asleep out there who have announcements to share, and then Superintendent Albertson, I'll finish up with you or start with you?
Start with them.
Okay.
I can share real quick. Southside North School of 165 kids. We had a fundraiser about 2 weeks ago at Triple Play, and we had over 260 people attend that.
Great.
Wow. It's huge for us. So
Great.
Lots of fun, lots of parents, and we had a blast. So
Cool.
Excellent.
that's a win.
Yeah, thanks.
I'll just share a fun little story. So in the last snowstorm, we lost our outdoor tent, just snow loads. So the kids shoveled the field and made an igloo. And it's brought a lot of excitement to, and they're learning about structure building and how they're building right now and loving life. I have a feeling these kids will remember their igloo into their 30s and 40s.
That's great.
And it's safe. It's very thin at the top. I went in. It's very safe.
Can I
Thank
make a
you.
comment on that?
Yes.
So last night at the dinner table, my stepson was bringing this up. We were talking about it, and his mother and I were in second grade at Washington together. I said, I remember our pile of snow that we, like you'll remember it. I guarantee it. So
That's great.
That's funny.
Is there any other?
I can just say that at Kootenai Elementary, the last 2 days we've celebrated our Quarter 2 awards for students, and it's been great to
have students back together, having assemblies and celebrating student successes and growth, and it's been really exciting.
Great, thank you. Andrew, is there anything from district office or Casey? Okay. Superintendent Albertson?
Just good luck to all the winter sports teams as they prepare for districts, and good luck to them. Yeah.
Well, this has been a little longer than normal meeting, but I will ask the public, we no longer have the downstairs room available and we have to move into executive session directly following this. So when we adjourn in the next few minutes, I will ask everyone to move out and downstairs. If they need to have any last discussions, it could be down in that lower lobby downstairs. Sorry, that's just, I think from here going forward through the end of the year, we don't have that room available to privately meet. So thank you. I will now hear a motion to move into executive session.
I move that we move into executive session as provided for in Idaho Code Title 74, Section 206, subsection 1B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student, to communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated. The mere presence of legal counsel at an executive session does not satisfy this requirement.
I second that.
Moved and seconded.
You get to
Any
make the motion
discussion?
next time.
We'll have a roll call vote.
Okay, roll call vote. Trustee Decker.
Aye.
Trustee Peters.
Aye.
Trustee Sherman.
Aye.
Trustee Williams.
Aye.
Trustee Lewis.
Aye.
Thank you.
So now we've gone into executive session, so if everybody could dash for the door, we'll be able to begin.